Good evening, everyone. The time is 6:01 on January 27th, 2025, and we are about to start the HB 581 public hearing. Prior to starting that, I'm going to read the conduct that we expect individuals to have when they're speaking. The Clayton County Board of Education welcomes public participation and will hear any interested individuals pursuant to the guidelines outlined policy BCBI. Members of the public will not be allowed to discuss individual personnel issues or confidential student matters. Speakers must identify themselves and topics before speaking. Speakers will be given 3 minutes. Do we have a timekeeper here? All right. Speakers will be given 3 minutes to speak, and time may not be yielded from one speaker to another. Board members will not respond to comments from speakers. The chairman may respond as appropriate. Issues requiring possible action by the board may be added to future agendas. Issues that may need to be addressed by the administration will be duly noted. Abusive language and/or personal attacks will not be permitted. Now we're going to hear from our CFO on a short presentation before we start comments. Ms. Bivens?
All right, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Smith, colleagues and community. This evening, I will be doing a presentation on HB 581 and the option to opt out. The purpose of this meeting of this hearing rather is to provide the public an opportunity. There we go. Okay. So an exemption for all local governments, including school districts. It limits the increase to the taxable value of homestead property to the rate of inflation each year, which controls how much the value of a home can increase annually. This rate is actually set by the state, not by the school district or any other local government. The state will set that rate each year. It applies to homestead property only, so that a homestead property is a home that an individual uses as their primary residence, which would be commercial or business property. Some of the current exemptions that we currently have that citizens are eligible for is our regular homestead exemption of $10,000 available for all homeowners. They have to occupy the property as of January 1st. There's no age limit on this one. As we go on, you will see some of these exemptions do have an age limit, and again, it's $10,000. There's also a double homestead exemption where all school taxes are exempted. It's available for homeowners age 65 on January 1 of the following year. Their taxable income can exceed $10,000, cannot living in 5 acres of the property that they're on. So if they have more than 5 acres, that additional acreage would not be exempt. We also have a senior exemption. It's a full exemption from homeowners age 65 on January 1st of the following year. We also have a 100% disability exemption homeowners who are 100% disabled. It also only applies to the home, and if someone qualified, they work with the tax house. It's limited to $117,014. So this individual will be taxed on any portion of assessed value that exceeds this amount. The requirements for this is the spouse must be a Georgia resident. It must have been a spouse of a member of the U.S. Armed Forces killed in any war or armed conflict in which the U.S. was engaged. And there's no age requirement on this one as well. And then the last one is for a widowed, unremarried spouse of a police officer or firefighter killed in the line of duty. They may be exempt from all ad valorem property taxes. We wanted to note that the floating homestead exemption is an additional exemption above these that citizens or residents may be eligible for. It does not replace any of these. You would have this, that plus what we already have. So the bill or the legislation provided a provision for governments to opt out. It's a one-time opportunity to opt out. Any government authority can elect to opt out. If they do, or if they're even going to consider it, they must have 3 hearings. We must advertise those hearings. And then we must also file a resolution to the Secretary of State by March the 1st if the governing body decides to opt out. And again, opting out does not impact any of the existing homestead exemptions. So next, we're going to talk about the financial impact to the district if we do not opt out. This slide shows the revenue sources for the district. Most local governments have local taxes, and we do it just like everyone else, and that is 40% of our revenue. 60% of our revenue comes from QBE state funding, and less than 1% comes from federal funds. And these are the funds that are used for the day-to-day operations that pays for the instructional supplies and materials for our scholars, like textbooks, academic and extracurricular activities, our teacher salaries, utilities, facilities and equipment maintenance, as well as safety and security. Do we need another battery here? Okay. Excuse me. So if the government doesn't opt out, and for the district specifically, it would lock us into potentially damaging financial constraints by compounding restrictions in local property tax earnings. Had this bill been in place over the previous 7 years, the district could have potentially lost an estimated $35 million over that 6-year period. So this analysis, excuse me, shows what our homestead property values were from 2018 to 2024, which is our most recent tax digest. And it shows how much it increased each year. So you can see from 2018 to 2019, we had 11.61% increase. However, the CPI for that year was 2.4. Had this bill been in place then, instead of us generating $41.3 million at a millage rate of 20 mills, being capped at the 2.4% would have only generated $37.9 million, and that's about a $3.4 million loss in revenue we would have had that year. And as each year progresses, that exemption gets larger, and so does the difference or the decrease in revenue. I will point out in 2022 and 2023, those were the 2 years that we saw the housing prices skyrocket, and those 2 years are an anomaly for us. You see where we had 25.6 and 26% increase in those 2 years in the assessment values. That has not been the norm for the district. Our total digest has increased anywhere from 8 to 10% on average prior to that. So because we have no way of predicting how the property values are going to increase in future years or what the rate of inflation is going to be, I did an example using the average 8% growth rate that I referenced earlier for assessed values, and it remains flat for the next 5 years. And then also using the current rate of inflation as of December was 2.9%, which is the CPI is what was used. And this demonstrates that over the next 5 years, we could potentially lose about a little over $38 million. So for next fiscal year, using 2024 as the base year, if we had an 8% growth in property values, that would increase the digest to $4.6 billion. That would generate $90.4 million. However, if the CPI remains at 2.9, the assessed values will only increase to 4.4 billion and will only generate 85.4 million, which is about a $5 million decrease or less in revenue that we would be able to collect. And as I stated earlier, this expands every year or increases each year. So the next year it will be 5.5 up to 6 and all the way up to almost $7.8 million. So over the 5 year period, that would be a cumulative loss of about $38.1 million. So how does the new homestead exemption work? So what I did is I took the assumption that the fair market value of a home of $350,000 for the base year. The assessed value is 40% of the fair market value, so that would be $140,000. So that's what you pay taxes on. Our current homestead exemption that's available to all homeowners that reside in that house is $10,000. So your net taxable value would be $130,000. That's the assessed value less the exemption. Our current millage rate is 19.6 mills, so that homeowner would pay $2,548 in taxes for this year. Under the column year one, with the 8% increase, assuming an 8% increase in assessed fair market value, that would be the $350,000 home would be $378,000 fair market value. However, the 40% of that is $151,200. That's what you would be taxed on. However, because this bill caps the growth at the rate of inflation, under the assumptions that I presented earlier, we use a 2.9% rate. I could only go to 2.9%. So that assessed value of $151,200 would be $144,060. You would still get the $10,000 homestead exemption. However, we would add the difference between the assessed value and the growth, that's the restricted growth, that's what the floating homestead exemption would be. So instead of paying taxes on the $151,200, you would get an exemption of $17,140 and paying taxes only on $134,060. Your tax obligation at 19.6 mills would be $2,628. If we did not have the floating homestead exemption, you would be taxed on the $141,200. That's the $151,200 minus the exemption of $10,000, and you would pay $2,768 in taxes. So this HB 581 impact to the taxpayer would be a savings, an annual savings of $140. And when I divided that by 12, because homeowners like me, we want to see, well, how is that going to impact my mortgage, my escrow? It was about $11.66, or so I rounded up to $12 a month is what the impact would be. Go back, I went too fast. Okay, so capping property tax revenue available to the district each year will prevent the district from offering more competitive salaries, providing innovative programs for our scholars, delayed facilities maintenance, and providing a safe learning environment. This can result in permanent reductions in operations, severely impacting our ability to maintain essential programs, services, and support staff. We could have significant reductions in programs and services currently provided to our students. We could potentially see increased class sizes as well as a reduction in staff. Currently, we have no other methods to recoup tax revenue loss. Our millage rate is capped at 20 mills. We're currently at 19.6 mills, which was reduced a couple of years ago. If we were to increase it by that additional zero point 0.4 mills to the full 20 mills, it would generate an additional $4.4 million. Clayton County has the second lowest property values of the 8 neighboring or metro Atlanta districts. And it's important to note that, as I stated earlier, the increased property assessment values that we witnessed in 22 and 23 were out of the trend for the district, because prior to that, our digest growth was an average 8 to 10%. So, and then also in 2024, we saw an increase of 7.9% from the prior year, which was a little bit lower than the 2 previous years and slightly below previous year's average growth. So some of the pros and cons were, of course, the pro of HB 581 is reduced ad valorem taxes for individual homeowners. However, on the con side, it would have significant financial impacts to the district. It would reduce the taxes that we can collect. And as I stated earlier, or as was shown on the illustration earlier, if this had been in effect in 2023, we would have reduced our revenue collections by about $11 million. If it had been in effect in 2024, which is the digest that supports this current fiscal year that we're in, it would have reduced our collections by about 1.4 million. And then projecting out, as you saw earlier, on FY 2026, the reduction would be about $5 million based on the assumptions that I discussed earlier. The only way to fix this would be to raise the millage rate. Georgia Constitution, again, limits us to 20 mills max. We've already levied 19.6, and if we were to raise it to 20 mills, that would get us an additional $4.4 million. Then, as I stated, we have no other method to recoup the losses to the general fund. All right, Mr. Chair, that's all I have. I'll turn it back over to you for public comments.
Thank you, Ms. Bivens.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Before I go further, I just want, is there any public officials that are in the building? If you can please stand up. Okay. All right. Thanks for attending. We also have the tax commissioner, Danielle Smith, that is joining us this evening. Ms. Smith, what I think I'm going to do different than the hearing this morning is I'm going to let the few people speak first, so that if there's something that you could address when they brought up their point, you can do that then. Thank you. All right, so we will now get started with our list of people who want to make comments. The first person on my list is Dr. Tim Hines. Oh, okay. I thought it was a few, Ms. Smith, but it's quite a few. Dr. Hines, thanks for joining us.
It's my honor. Wait, I'll set my own stopwatch. Well, come on. Oh, there. I'm Tim Hines. I have lived in Clayton County for 14 and a half years. While a senior citizen, I have never applied for a homestead exemption because I believe it is the obligation of all citizens to continue to contribute to the most important investment that a county can make in the welfare and the support and the education of its children. There are two general reasons why I would urge this board to opt out of the homestead exemption. And there's some examples in other states which indicate why opting out is important. The first, for Clayton County, such an exemption would provide a disincentive to list houses on the market. You have a house, you don't sell it, because once you begin to sell it, whoever then comes in must pay a tax. One of the things that I think is crucial for the future economic as well as educational growth of this county is a continued movement and an appeal of folks who have not had the chance to experience the extraordinary benefits of living in Clayton County. This particular homestead exemption provides massive disincentives for exactly that kind of movement in the future. Secondly, I would observe that it provides a disincentive for a more diverse accumulation of housing stock. It does that, again, for the same reasons that I observed before, by providing disincentives of new housing stock. It creates the conditions in which new individuals coming to the county will have disincentives to visit. The experience of California with similar kinds of restrictions on local taxation has provided an artificial limit on such properties, and therefore a Georgia Amendment 1 keeping the real estate market more stagnant than it would otherwise be. Already a long-term challenge, quite frankly, for Clayton County. The chief financial officer, I think, provided some extraordinarily good data indicating specific losses, but long-term, because it is not very effective public policy, I would urge the board to opt out. Thank you, Mr.
Dr.
Chairman.
Hines.
My time is up.
I have a Sherry White. Were you planning on speaking here? I have your name on the list, but you weren't planning. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to go with the Y. Maria Ramirez. Is Ramirez here? Maria? Okay. Ermeline Sennett. Ermeline Sennett. Larkin Bryan. Larkin Bryan. Patricia Bryant. Patricia.
I misunderstood what he had me to sign.
Okay, gotcha. Miss Sherry Chris, are you speaking? Okay. Let's see, Josephine Kane. Josephine Kane. Is there anybody, could you show me your hand if you want to speak?
I thought we were just
Yeah,
signing
that-
in for the meeting. I'm sorry.
What was that, man?
I thought we was just signing
Signing
for
in,
the
okay.
meeting.
All right, I don't see any hands, so I think that's the completion of our comments. Now I will bring up the tax commissioner for, go ahead. You see somebody?
And Mr. Chair, just to let everyone know, there's a third hearing next week. If anyone feels they need the opportunity, they certainly can do that.
You got it. Ms. Smith, if you could come up. This is the tax commissioner for Clayton County. She's gonna speak to us and give us a little more clarity on the HB 581. Once again, Ms. Smith, thank you so much for taking out your time earlier today and now to join us.
No problem. Thank you for having us. I also have here with me this evening my Chief Deputy, Ms. Lisa Wood. Just in case there are additional questions, she may have to chime in as well. As I stated earlier this morning in the meeting, in short, HB 581 is an exemption, right? So on its face, of course, I'm a resident too, right? Exemptions cost, they're not free. And so as Madam CFO alluded to, it will result in some kind of reduction in your ability to collect on revenue. I want to be clear, it's not interfering in the collection on your entire digest. It would be an impediment on the collection of the growth in your digest. 2024's values is your base. If you were to opt in, everybody who had a homestead exemption in 2024 are automatically in if the board is in. I also want to be clear that there is no opting in, there's only opting out. If you don't opt out, you're automatically in, okay? And you're in for life. If you opt out, you're out for life, okay? As it stands right now, there's no opting in later. But I do want to make sure it's clear, this is, HB 581 would stop you from collecting on the full growth. Suppose that growth was 8% increase in your digest. You would not be able, the digest is going to be what it is. The home values are going to be what they are. You wouldn't be able to collect on the full growth of that digest. Does that make sense? So it's the growth that you're able to collect on that's being affected, okay? There are a lot of jurisdictions, I can't tell you how many, I don't have statistics, but there are many jurisdictions that are opting out, not because they believe it's a bad thing in terms of the exemption, but releasing that control at the local level, because the county, the cities, they can implement their own local level legislation versus the state mandating this on those local jurisdictions that they may not really understand the needs of that community. So to have a blanket exemption for all counties as though we're all created equal, we're not. And so I think that may be the bigger play at hand is creating your own local legislation. It kind of is forcing everybody to work together and to have to communicate about this to see what the needs are and to find a solution that's beneficial to the whole community. Any questions? I think of anything I'm forgetting to say. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith.
And I think I mentioned earlier this morning, there is potential legislation coming down the pipeline that could force everybody into 581. So that's something to keep an eye on. If you have questions, that's something you need to address your local legislators about. There is pending legislation this session that could force all school boards, cities, and the counties into 581. So, yeah, not against the exemption, how it's implemented is critical.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Smith. And with that, I think that's the end of our public hearing. The public hearing is adjourned. And now we're ready for our Clayton County regular work session, which it is currently 6:30. Today is January 27th, 2025 at 6:30. And I call our work session to order. Before moving forward, I would like to call the roll. Okay, and calling our roll, we have District 1, Jasmine Bowles. She could not be with us today. She's a little bit under the weather. I got District 2, Mark Christmas. I got District 3, Dr. Jesse Goree.
Present.
I got District 4, Victoria Williams.
Present.
I got District 5, Dr. D. Haney. I got District 6, Miss Mary Baker.
Present.
I got District 7, Miss Sabrina Hill.
Present.
I got District 8, Joy Cooper.
Present.
I'm District 9, Benjamin Straker, and I got Superintendent Dr. Anthony Smith.
Present.
I got Board Attorney, Mr. Clem Doyle.
Present.
I got Board Coordinator, Ms. Kim Blackwood. And I got Assistant to the Superintendent, Ms. Alicia Battles. Fantastic. Who was that? Dawn Bly, okay. And I have Assistant to the Deputy Superintendent, Dawn Bly. All right, there are no recommendations from the executive session, and now we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'm going to read the ethics statement. In accordance to Board Policy BH, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflicts of interest and appearance of such conflicts. Do any board member have any known conflicts of interest or appearance of such conflicts with respect to any matter scheduled to come before the board at this meeting or appearing on our proposed agenda? Seeing none. If so, please identify the conflict or appearance of conflict and refrain from your participation in the matter involved. Before I get started with the rest of the agenda, I just wanted to take out a second so we could speed through this after the agenda is done. As we're going through the agenda, I'm going to go from left to right with my board members, giving each of them like a minute and a half to give any announcements or anything that they want to say, so we can get that out of the way and then go through the agenda. So I'll start with District 2, Mark Christmas. Do you have anything to say to the audience? District 3, Dr. Jesse Goree.
I would like to acknowledge that one of our board members will be celebrating a birthday on Wednesday, Miss Victoria Williams. So I just want us to say happy birthday to her. And also, I would like for us to, once everybody announces, to take a moment of silence
Right,
for
I have
one of
that
our
planned.
students that passed.
Victoria Williams.
I would like everybody to wear black and gold for my birthday on Wednesday. And show a video saying who that. That'll be real appreciated. Thank y'all.
Since I have the mic all the time, I have nothing to say right now. Miss Mary Baker.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that this Friday, January 31st, I'm trying to change the date, January 31st at 6:30, and then Saturday, February 1st, starting at 9 a.m., will be the regional mock trial competition. And I am pleased to say that this year, Morrow High School, Jonesboro High School, North Clayton High, Mondays Mill High, and both Morrow and Jonesboro will have 2 teams competing. And in all the years that I have attended, I think this is the most that we've had from our school system. And I will tell you, if you have never seen this, you won't believe your eyes. I was floored the first time I saw it. I thought our one team, I thought it was a sketch or you know, a real winner. And when I watched the other team, I just said, well, that team didn't prove their side, which is a scary thought when you look at it, that our judicial system is based on who can tell the better story and get the information out. So again, if you've never seen them, please pick one of these times to go. You will be amazed. And we're going to have, I will tell you, Jonesboro has somebody who works in the district attorney's office who was at mock trial as one of our attorneys. So please, I think I took more of my time.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Ms. Sabrina Hill.
Excuse me.
I skipped you. What? Yep, I sure did. I'm sorry, Dr. Haney.
Okay,
Go ahead. The mic is yours.
thank you. Jonesboro High School, will be having the band that is the Majestic Marching Cardinals. As you know, they're going over to England. And so they're having a high tea, and we'd like for you all to support that. That would be this Saturday. The tickets are $35. They will be honoring one of our very own, Miss Felicia Brown. So we want to be there to support that cause. Along with Mount Zion High School Band, they will be going to Hawaii. We want to support them financially as well. And we also want the district to support our Clayton Eagles, our adaptive sports. Mr. Mark Christmas can speak on that if you like. But I'm soliciting that you all go out and we all, because I go to their practices, and I want you all to just go out there and just support them. They really need our support. And to see our children, I mean, we're trying to beat this team, Houston County. We cannot get it for some reason, but we're going to get it. So let's support our children in that effort. So along with all of our sports, thank you, Mr. Townsend, for keeping us abreast of that. And I do have to say, when our students are doing these sports and curriculum, we know that they are meeting those grade point averages as well, because Dr. D makes sure of that. So we want to support our students in every effort, in addition to our academics. And parents, we need your help in supporting us in the academics as well. But again, those three announcements will be really beneficial for our students to see the support of our staff as well as our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Haney. Sabrina Hill.
Yes, thank you. I just want to share that I will be having a town hall meeting on Wednesday, January 29th, a roundtable discussion with Terra Elementary, Kilpatrick Elementary, and Morrow Elementary. And so I just want to, invite you to come out. I want our community to see us present and just share the questions and concerns that we often hear, but we don't take the time to sit down and try to get resolutions for them. And with the climate of today's political climate, just want to make sure that we are hearing the needs and meeting the needs. And one thing that is really, really important that I've heard consistently is just housing insecurity and food insecurity. That is just really a great need. And I don't know that we are really hearing from the families and how difficult it is when they go home, our children go home on the weekend and just don't have those meals that we provide during the school day. So if you are available and time permits, I would love to have you present to just hear what our community has to say and see how we can continue to serve them as a district and as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Ms. Cooper.
Hello. Also on January the 29th, I will be joining Ms. Hill at her town hall meeting. So I would love for all of my Morrow Elementary parents and students to come out. I would love to meet you and talk about some of the issues. But also on February the 8th, I will have a Heart Health Awareness Expo. It's going to be at the Morrow Community Center. And of course, this is my second year, and I think everyone knows, with my brother passing away a couple of years ago around a heart disease, this is something very near and dear. So I would love for individuals to come out and support me with this event. And also, if there's any vendors that are available that would like to come out and participate, I'm asking for them to come out. But please come out on February the 8th. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. That does it for our announcements. Next on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda.
Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't forget the moment of silence.
Okay, gotcha.
Also, the Lunar New Year, I believe, is.
You forgot that in your announcement?
We'll celebrate that. But I actually have the names of the students.
For the students? I'm sorry, go ahead.
For the, yes, we actually lost two students over the last couple of weeks. Michael Chenard of Mondays Mill High and Ariel Hill at Eddie White. So if we could take a moment to, Thank you all.
I also want, especially the staff of CCPS, to keep Mr. Charles White in your prayers. He's going through some health tests and procedures. So if we could just keep him in our prayers, this is our family. So make sure we keep him in mind. All right. I need a motion for the adoption of the agenda. Okay. Ms. Corey, you have something?
Well, you asked for a motion, and I
Okay,
was going
yep,
to make
you're
a motion.
absolutely right.
Normally, I don't look this way.
All right.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
And Ms. Hill,
I second the motion.
it has been properly moved and it has been moved and properly second. Can I get a vote? It's unanimous. 8-0. 8. I didn't hear you. Who's like that? Ms. Baker, you all right? Did it come on?
It's shown on your beds.
All right. Now we have updates to the board. I'll pass that on to the superintendent.
Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Vice Chairman, members of the board, staff, and community. First up for updates to the board is Business Services, Ms. Ramona Bivens.
That's not what's on here.
I'm sorry, Ms. Alicia Albritton.
Yeah.
HR.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, other members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Smith, colleagues, and community members. At the board's request, I am providing an overview of the district's hiring processes. Today's overview will cover both our general hiring process as well as the hiring process used for our administrative positions. The sole intent of our hiring processes is to establish protocols to guide the selection of the most qualified candidate for each of the district's positions. Beginning with our administrative hiring process. As a reminder, the administrative hiring process is used for all board-approved positions to include principals, assistant principals, and positions at grade 30 and above. The administrative hiring process is divided into 3 phases: pre-interview, interview, and post-interview. During the pre-interview phase, the vacancy is verified to be vacant and the position is posted by Human Resources. Thereafter, the hiring manager is able to identify eligible applicants from those that apply based on the job description for the position and references. Once the hiring manager completes their vetting, the candidates' names are forwarded to HR for additional vetting, and that begins after the position has posted for 5 calendar days. HR confirms the candidates that are eligible to interview. The panel members are chosen based on criteria. The interview logistics are finalized between Human Resources and the hiring manager, and candidates are contacted and then scheduled for interviews. Interviews are conducted by a panel using standardized forms and maintaining confidentiality. Following the interviews, panel members are asked to submit their completed screening forms, and there is an additional step that is conducted for our principal positions, which are the second-level conversations with the school council. Once HR receives those screening forms, the scores are reviewed and the top candidates are forwarded to our senior district leaders for further review and Superintendent Smith's final decision. That selected candidate is informed of their selection and prepared to attend the board meeting for your final approval and vote. Following the vote, HR finalizes the hiring process, which may include receiving background checks if there's an external candidate being recommended, and the extension of the contract. All other candidates that were interviewed are notified of the outcome. Okay. As far as our general hiring process, this is the process that we use for both certified and classified positions that are not board approved. The hiring manager initiates the request for hire after completing their interview process, ensuring that the application is complete prior to making a recommendation for hire. That hire then goes through the 7 steps that you see. The contributors to the process are the HR staffing team, HR certification team, the HR director that has purview over the department where the position rests, as well as our colleagues in safety and security. The HR staffing team verifies the vacancy, ensures that the vacancy exists. The recommendation for hire then goes to our HR-based certification team, taking a look at the certification requirements for the position, if there are any, and compare those to the credentials held by the applicant that was recommended. The recommendation for hire then goes to our HR director for a series of reviews to include the review of any Professional Standards Commission ethics case. If the recommended applicant it vets out of the HR director step, they then advance to the background check. If those results are favorable, the hire is then approved. If it's a contract eligible position, the contract is extended at that time. The service level agreement for this process is 7 days, pending submission of a completed application process, barring no ethics case that has to be reviewed, and if the applicant reports directly to the vendor for the background check. That completes the summary of the general and administrative hiring process. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Ms. Albright. Britton, Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Ms. Albright, for your presentation. Just really quickly, on here, you have that for the principal candidates, that the school council, they are involved in this. To what extent are they involved? Are they using the same metrics that you're giving the panel to use to grade the applicant?
No, they have a different set of questions that they are able to choose from. So a pool of questions is provided to serve as a foundation. They determine which questions will be asked. As a result of those questions and that engagement, the school council does make a recommendation. They are able to converse with the top 2 applicants. And so through their debriefing, they make a recommendation of who their top choice would be.
Now, how is that weighed, being that that principal or assistant principal will be someone that's in their community for their kids? Is it a certain percentage, or how do you go about their
No, it's not
as to what they want?
I'm sorry.
No,
Yes.
that's okay.
So it's not a weighted recommendation. When the recommended candidate advances to senior leadership for review, and Dr. Smith's final recommendation, he does receive the choice of the school council.
Gotcha. So he just takes it into consideration.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hill.
Thank you. I just want to ask, what criteria are the candidates being scored on during the interview process?
So there's a series of questions that the hiring manager drafts and provides to the HR team, and those are the questions that are used to drive the interview. And so each of the panel members listens, engages with the those being interviewed, and they rate each question. And then there are some positions for which there may be a presentation, for example, and that presentation would also be rated.
Okay, so when they're asked a question, the panel will decide how they respond, what they respond, and does that display their skills, knowledge, and ability to do the task?
So there are just a series of questions that are asked. For each question, each panel member assigns their own individual rating based on their understanding of the role, their level of authority in that space, their level of engagement as a customer group of that position, and they assign their independent ratings. And then at the close of the process, all of the individual screening forms are provided to HR, and then we're responsible for aggregating the scores to do the rankings of those interviewed.
Okay. And one other question, vetting. When HR is vetting, does that mean that you're just verifying their credentials and their licensures and things of that nature? What would vetting entail?
Absolutely. So yes, HR is vetting them against the criteria as presented in the job description. So years of experience, level of education, PSC certification type and level. So whatever criteria is required for the position, HR assures that those that are selected to interview have those credentials, have that level of experience. They meet the criteria.
Thank you.
Ms. Baker?
I sent this to in already, but I just want to get your thoughts or just acknowledge this. My council had a question in regards to hiring and especially trying to get people to come to us from outside the county. And their suggestion was when we know that people are going to start to retire, they've told us we're going to retire, I'm not going to be here next year, to go ahead and start posting those positions now instead of waiting until the end of the school year, because people coming from other school systems might be more willing to say, oh, I know that I applied in Clayton and I already have a job in August, so I can go ahead and do this versus waiting until they've had to sign their contracts or whatever. So that was the one suggestion that we had sent in. And the other that I'd like to just put out there is that we have a neighboring county that their paychecks were late this month and they only get paid once a week. So maybe we need to
Once
put,
a month?
excuse me, once a month. They only get paid once a month. So maybe we need to make it big and bold that we pay twice a month, whether you need it or not. And, just things that attract people to come here. And like I said, that came from my council of getting these, so that at the last minute, you're not doing 1,000, postings, if you can start posting the people who are going to retire early.
Absolutely. So your council is right on target. Our FY26 postings go live in March. And ironically, on Friday, the recruitment team and I did have a conversation about highlighting on our collateral that the district pays semi-monthly.
Ms. Dr. Gorey?
Right, I believe Mr. Christmas Light was on first. I want to go back to your administrative hires. What determines when you are hiring for an administrative position such as a principal, whether you allow external candidates to apply? Because I've had some people say that they knew that we had vacancies, but at one time, I don't think we were doing anything but internal candidates. So what determines when that we'll actually allow internal and external candidates to apply for positions?
So whether or not the position post internal only or public facing is at the discretion of the district. And so there are times when there are numerous applicants in our internal pipeline, and those are opportunities that we only make available for applicants that are internal to the district.
Okay, and then my other question would be our application process, because it still seems like it has a lot of steps. And I'm just wondering, can that be shortened? Because generally when we get to the hiring process for teachers, we do lose a lot of teachers because it seems like our process is lengthy. And I'm just hoping that we can look at shortening it so that we can get some people, just as Ms. Baker mentioned about the other county not paying. And I want to also, since we're talking about that, I want to thank Dr. Smith, because instead of making people wait an extra week, he actually pushed the date back so we could get our funds before time.
So the Division of Human Resources really prides ourselves on continuous improvement. When we receive feedback, we definitely go back and review our processes, our protocols to see if we can gain any efficiency. And we've done that with the hiring process, removing any step that we could without compromising the district and bringing on any undue liability. Our service level agreement is 7 days. Right now, our average time to hire is 7.43 days. And so we are hitting that target in great fashion. We continue to look at the process to gain efficiency. The team has worked diligently to do so and will continue. The steps as presented today are considered non-negotiables because they ensure that we do a quality hire for the district and don't bring on undue liability.
I want to thank you for the presentation. I was pleasantly surprised to see it as a part of the agenda tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Christmas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Goree pretty much stated what I was going to ask about the 7 days. Why does it take so long to hire somebody? You answered that. But when you say 7 days and then you said 7.4.
That's our average time to hire right now, 7.43 days.
When we only work 5 days a week, does that turn into 9 days?
No.
Is it the 7 days including the weekends? What are we talking? Because I've had people said the hiring process was way too long and they just said they didn't want the job.
So from the time the hiring manager submits the request to hire to the approval email, the congratulatory email to the applicant that was chosen is 7 days. So depending on the day that it starts, it would be 7 days, seven business days from that point. Correct, but we know that right, but it's 7 business days because the team isn't working to do those type transactions on the weekend. So there is some weekend work. It just may not be in this space.
Do we share with the applicant that it's 7 business days? Because you know some of us think that when you say 7 days, it's 7 days. And then people get frustrated and move on.
Understood. I'll have to go back to the communication that they received to determine if it's clearly outlined to help manage the expectations.
Ms. Albritton, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Albritton. At this time, we'll ask Mrs. Bivens to provide a business services update.
And prior to Ms. Bivens giving her update, I want to point out that there are 2 budget amendments on the agenda. Those budget amendments were actually presented to us last week. The only reason why they're on the agenda today is because on the advice of our attorney, because proper documentation was not uploaded to the e-board, the board members did not have enough time to actually hear the presentation and compare it to the documentation. Now the documentation is added to the e-board, and Ms. Bivens did do the presentation last week. So those 2 agenda items will be added to the consent agenda for next week's board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening again. Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, board members, Superintendent Dr. Smith, colleagues, and community. I will be giving the financial update for the general fund as of December 31st, 2024. We have collected 46.3% of our budgeted revenues, as $327,690,605 is what we've collected. And we finally have gotten tax revenue. We received year to date, $164,746,124. That is 62% of our tax revenue that was received in November. Our December revenues that we received will be on the next report, so that number will go up. We collected $8.3 million in other local revenue, $154.4 million in our QBE funds, and $265,000 in federal revenue. On the expenditure side, we've spent about 38.4% of our budgeted expenditures. It's $271,724,184. That's 50% through the year, and we're trending at 38.4%. Our estimated ending fund balance after collecting our tax, we started out at an estimated 196 million, let me make sure I put that million on there, $389,701. And our projected ending fund balance as of December was $252,356,122. And also remember that that will go down. Well, it's going to probably go up for January because we're going to get more tax revenue in for December. And it will go down some as we go throughout the year because the tax revenue is, that we only get it through that time period. So any questions on the general fund budget comparison as of December 31st?
Ms. Corey?
I actually don't have a question, but I do want to clarify something about the presentation. In your defense, the documents that are in e-board that she's discussing tonight, we didn't necessarily have them before we met with her, but I was in the first meeting, and those documents were given to us, I believe, on Thursday. So the board has had Thursday through the weekend to look at the documents. So the documents are always in e-board. Now, whether we look at them or not, that's up to us. But these were in here. The only thing that we need to put in e-board for the public is we need to put the presentation for HDL for the.
Ms. Corey, I think you misunderstood me. This budget amendment was actually presented last meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct. So what happened last meeting, I presented one of these budget amendments, and I don't think you had a copy of that one.
Correct.
You had a copy of the other one last
Correct.
meeting, and I did not present that one. So we're bringing them both back
Correct.
so they can be approved at the next meeting.
So after speaking to Attorney Clem, he had suggested to us that we put it
Bring them
back
both
on the
back.
agenda and vote on it during our regular board meeting.
Right, I get that. I wasn't concerned about that. I thought you mentioned the documents that we didn't get to see.
Right.
So I'm just saying, whatever is in here, it was in here in enough time on Thursday for us to look at. But anyway, to your defense.
Thank you. So next, it's not on here. I'm going to do the two budget amendments next. The first one is for the pre-K grant in the amount of $420,000. This is from the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning, providing funding to 28 classes to refurbish the classrooms. So that's what this one is for, pre-K lottery and then for supplies. The second one is for the Clayton County Public Schools Foundation. They're providing $68,020.36 to support district initiatives for student support services, public safety in the superintendent's office. Again, that total is $68,020.36. So any questions on the budget amendments?
Any questions, board members? Ms. Hill?
Yes, Ms. Bivens, I just have one question. I know when we're doing the amendment that you increase revenue and increase expenses. Does that mean that the money is already spent, or it's just to show how it will be in our line item?
It's to show how it will, so board policy states that if we increase expenditures, we have to get the board to approve it, so we have to have a source of revenue anytime we do that. So this shows the source of revenue, so we're increasing the budget on the revenue side and on the expenditure side in the same amount. In some instances, I think the one to student support services for the homeless, we have spent that money already, but we still need to do the budget amendment for it.
Okay, but in this case, the money is not spent.
And not in, for pre-K, no. Again, part of the foundation funds was for the Christmas for the homeless. We had to go ahead and spend that portion of it, but we still needed to amend it into the budget.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Gorey? Dr. Gorey?
It's all the same. Actually, this is not the pre-K. Since it's mentioned here for the budget, I just wanted to point out too, I see our cabinet, want to make you all aware of the fact that I believe that the Head Start grant is being lost by, I guess, our providers. And I just wanted to put that out there to you all. I had Dr. Bradley call me to give me that information. I referred her to Ms. Denard, because since we're building the early learning center and we're starting with 3-year-olds, they would fall under Head Start, and want you all to be aware of that, and maybe we should be looking at trying to apply for those grants. So we would have funding for our students, because the state does not fund us for 3-year-olds.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Green.
Is there any other questions for Ms. Bivens? Okay.
So next we have the SPOS revenue.
I'm sorry,
report.
Ms. Bivens,
Oh,
hold on, the
sure.
light just flashed. Ms. Cooper?
No, I'm sorry. Just a reminder to look into why some of the schools have double disbursements versus the one.
I have an answer for you. I sent you a text message. And because when I looked at them, I realized some of our schools have multiple classrooms, pre-K classes. So these funds were to refurbish classrooms. So some of those, that's why you see 2 lines on there for a school, because they are doing more than one classroom. Okay? You're welcome.
I think that's it. You can move on.
So SPOS revenue collections for the month, what we received in December was actually collected in November, was $5,585,900 compared to the prior year, we collected $5,247,148. So as you can see, they're still trending up each month. So we're still on track. And this is the new SPOS. This is our second month of collections for the new SPOS, which is SPOS 7. I answer any questions on SPOS. Do you have any?
Do I have any questions in regards to the splash? Okay, moving on.
All right, and the final item I have is the purchasing report. So, according to board policy, the purchase of any non-consumable item with a value of $100,000 or more, and the purchase of a group of non-consumable items from a single vendor on individual or sequential purchase orders with a total value of $100,000 or more shall be approved by the Board of Education prior to purchase and/or prior to the execution of any agreement to purchase. The policy also requires that at the regular monthly Board of Ed meeting, the superintendent or designee will provide a report of all purchases greater than $10,000 which were approved during the prior month and not previously approved by the board. In response to this policy, the purchasing department has included in the executive summary that you received a detailed account of all purchases and contracts with the value exceeding $100,000 that require board approval. Also attached are spreadsheet reports that for Report A, which is consumable purchases made with the value of $10,000 or more. Report B is for non-consumable purchases made with a value of $10,000 or more, but less than $100,000. And Report C are the non-consumable items with a value of $100,000 or more that require board approval as detailed in the executive summary. I have purchasing staff here to answer any questions you may have on the purchasing report.
Is that it? Any questions? Ms. Hill?
Yes, thank you. I just have a question on our human resource request for this contract. Will that be for like permanent positions or temporary positions, or what type of positions will this entail for the professionally qualified, well-trained, and highly effective teachers?
I believe those are our contract teachers with Interlodge, Teach for America.
Okay.
Is that correct?
And are they with us for what, 2 years? How long are they with us?
Let's see, what did this say the original contract is for? Hold on. It doesn't say on here. Okay, hold on.
So the additional money is already a part of the HR budget. We are bringing it forth so that it can be added to the contracted teachers line item in our budget. That money allows us to secure teachers through the vendors that are part of the contracted teachers that were awarded that contract. And for this year, those are Teach for America and Interlodge. Okay, so that allowed us, moving that money allows us to maintain securing those teachers.
Okay, so just for clarification, the funds were already encumbered, and now you're just asking for them to be allocated for that particular line item to continue to pay them out of that. Okay.
Correct, yes. So it's not a new ask.
Okay, thank you.
And in regards to the length of service, the TFA commitment is 2 years. We love when they stay beyond that, and that will be included in the data summary that you all will receive as a request from last Thursday.
Yes.
But their initial commitment through TFA is for 2 years, and Interlodge's initial commitment is 3 years. We are able to ask for an extension, but it has to be granted.
Thank you so much.
Is there any more questions for Ms. Bivens? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Mr. Joseph.
Good evening once again, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Smith. You received the SPLOST construction update, and for the month of January, there were no payments, nor were there any change orders executed for the period. Additionally, you received the Terra Stadium Athletic Fieldhouse replacement bid. It is the recommendation of the superintendent that J&R Construction and Development out of Carrollton, Georgia, bid be accepted. The base bid amount was for $9,757,375, and the bid included 19.1 SLBE participation. Are there any questions?
Dr. Goree?
Yes, I think I mentioned before, if you all could let us know when these bids are going out. Could you give us a little summary of what is happening with the Terra Stadium Fieldhouse, because it is a disgrace.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it's a disgrace. The Fieldhouse at Terra Stadium is not Title IX compliant. There are no female restrooms, so the scope of work includes replacement of the Fieldhouse, as well as renovation of the concession buildings and restrooms, as well as building new storage buildings. And so it's just the scope of work will bring the Fieldhouse and Terra Stadium compliant to the federal regulations.
Okay, well, I'm not even worrying about the restrooms. I'm worrying about the locker room for the athletes. Because, I mean, the field house is not even as big as this boardroom. And I was at a game when we had lightning strikes and we needed to have the teams to go into the building, and the children did not want to go in there, and I don't blame them, because it's cramped, and I hope that we're going to put some type of a state-of-the-art locker room for our student athletes, as well as those that are coming to visit us, because I'm just very embarrassed every time I go there. And not only that, for our athletic director, because his facilities are horrible. And, you know, there's a little spider in the restroom that always looks to try to attack when you go in there. But I just think it's inhumane, and I'm looking forward to the rebuilding of that field house.
Yes, ma'am. The project includes locker rooms, male and female, for sports teams, as well as a pretty nice office for our executive director of athletics.
Ms. Hill?
Thank you. I just have a question regarding to our capital improvement on behalf of Morrow Elementary. I noticed that I'm not seeing it anywhere, and just would like to know, can you give us an update or when we can expect to have some type of information? I know Morrow was scheduled to be initially in this part of the project, and it has not yet been discussed. And from my understanding, there are some very, very severe concerns with the plumbing that creates an odor that makes it very difficult to have a healthy learning environment. And so I just want to know, are you aware of it? And if you could please give us an update for Morrow Elementary.
Yes, ma'am. I will definitely work with facilities maintenance regarding the service of the restrooms. In terms of Morrow Elementary School, we are handicapped in terms of swing space. And so currently, the only swing space that we have available is the former old Morrow High School. As you're aware, Forest Park Middle School is currently located at the old Morrow High School. So once the new Forest Park Middle School is complete, we will be able to proceed with the next phase of renovations. Those conversations are ongoing. We will be able to provide the board an update on the next round of projects here pretty soon.
Thank you.
Dr. Haney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ronnie, just going back to Tara Stadium, when would that project start?
The board will take action next Monday. We would probably start in 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay. All right. Thanks.
Dr. Gorey?
Mr. Chairman, in regards to Ms. Hill's question about Morrow Elementary School, I think that one of the reasons we have a listing of things that we want to do, but I believe that is contingent upon our SPLOS. So if the board doesn't support it, then we can't build it, and they will be in the conditions that they're in. So it's really up to us to make the decision about whether we have capital improvements throughout the district, or we just do the ones that we have now and figure a way.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Ms. Albritton?
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Ms. Albritton.
Ms. Albritton, I should have just kept you up here like during your.
Good evening again, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, other members of the board, Superintendent Smith, colleagues, and community members. The Personnel Changes Report summarizes all personnel actions for the period of December 14th, 2024 through January 21st, 2025. I do want to highlight that the fiscal year 26 contract issuance is near. Our first distribution will be conducted on Friday, February 21st, and the final distribution is April 18th. All other human resources updates were submitted to the Board of Education for your review. I am happy to answer any questions that you have.
Do I have any questions for Ms. Albritton? Seeing none, we'll move to the next agenda item, which is the board matters. We're doing a second read for policy series F. Actually, policy series F, policy series K, and policy series L. Is there any discussion that anyone wants to have? Dr. Gorey, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. I want to discuss policy series F. I think I've been looking forward to having this discussion since October of 2024. I find it very interesting that the information that was placed into eBoard said that there was no suggested revisions for the policies. However, there is a suggestion from a faction of this board for a revision of policy F. And particularly, I feel somewhat insulted because it is in reference to me. In October of 2024, actually, I'm sorry, not 2024, 2023, at least 10 people sent a letter in requesting that the new facility, the Riverdale Early Learning Center, be named after me. The item was placed on the agenda, and when we came to the meeting, immediately 3 board members hit their light to actually voice a no. I personally feel that this is discriminatory because one of the main things that we're trying to change in this policy, and this policy has been fine as far as I'm concerned for as long as I've been on the board, 16 and a half years, is that your main point is not to name a facility after a board member. That in particular is this board member, Jesse Goree. I was the chair at that time. I sat and tried to have a very calm demeanor, but I'm just going to let you know that I felt very insulted. I still feel very insulted because you've sent in a new policy. And I want to point out some things to you that I find to be very racist. One of the things that you have listed, you actually could have kept the policy that you had and added some things. But you sent in a new policy that obviously to me doesn't look like it was very creative, maybe a copy and paste. But one of the considerations that is placed there is ease of pronunciation and spelling of whoever the facility is named after. So in essence, that says to me that if somebody's name is Shaniqua Olabumbe, then you don't want this person, the building can't be named after them because maybe you can't pronounce it and maybe you can't spell it. And for this board to be comprised of 8 African-American individuals, for that to even be placed in this policy, to me is very appalling. So I'm going to ask that that be removed. Because one person does not.
When you said removed, you mean that specific?
Oh, yes, I would like that removed.
Well, okay, so this is the second read. And what that means is that we're going to have a discussion right now, which you started out. If there's any changes that we want to this policy, let's make those changes in the policy and get them over to, I forget her name, what's her name?
Ms.
Damaris. No, it's somebody else. Right, Latoya. Get those over to Latoya. She'll make those changes. We'll have our discussion.
All right, let me continue with my discussion.
Okay.
And as I said, I think one of the things that I have a problem with board members, not just this particular board, but school board members across the state. We do great work. We get emails, we try to solve problems 24/7. For someone to put in a policy that a building cannot be named after a board member, I find
Ms.
it.
Correa,
No, please don't interrupt me.
all right, I won't interrupt you, but you're saying incorrect information.
I'm looking at Miss Sherry that's sitting out here in the audience right now, and I believe when we had our conversation today, she mentioned that I believe it was her father was a board member or a family member, and there's not one building in Clayton County Public Schools that's named after a board member. Do you not respect yourself that you don't think you're worthy of having a building named after you? Now, when the people came and spoke on my behalf, when the people wrote a letter on my behalf, there was not, we've never turned anybody down before until my name popped up. And as I said, I was very insulted. There's not one person that sits on this dais that I have not helped to sit in the seat that you're sitting in. Those nice offices that you're sitting in over there, that's my work. The nice salary that you get, that's my work. When any parent calls and has a problem, I solve the problem. When our children were put off the bus, I solved their problem. I got them brought in. When we had 2 children to commit suicide one night when we were sitting here at the board because we had some people that would not vote for communities in schools. I fought for communities in schools, and that was placed, and we put it in our schools. That particular school building over there, that is my idea. It was not the superintendent's idea. It was not any staff member's idea. It was mine, based on the research of Clayton County. And I'm very upset over the fact that people came in here and could not wait to hit that button to say no. Now, what would have been the respectful thing would have been to have a conversation with me, because I'm open to conversation, and I can understand if one of your little problem is that you think that naming something after me shows favoritism or anything. You could have just said, well, you know what, Ms. Gorey, you've done great work. I think you deserve the building to be named after you, but you know, we don't want a sitting board member right now. But you could have said, you know, we think that that building should be named after you, and we'll do it once you're no longer a member of the board. But you didn't do that. And as I said, you have helped. My other coworker that used to sit in this very seat died because he didn't have health insurance. And we could have given him health insurance, but we didn't do it. But guess who fought for us to get it? Life insurance. Every single thing that you sitting around here, walking around enjoying as a board member is my work. You can get in any building in this district. This is my work. And I am very insulted that you would even come up with this. So basically, that is what I want you to know. Because I have never, anybody that's ever come up here, and most of the time when people have come in here for naming, it's only one person that sends a note in and it's done. I work to have it done. And you should understand that what the work that we do is good work. And we are worthy. The commissioners have no problem. You can go to all of these recreation centers. They're named after commissioners. They're named after people that have done work. But you want to insult me by saying that no, it can't happen. And then the irony and the most hurtful thing was after those people raised their hand to say no, they then pushed the button to make a nomination to name the gymnasium at Morrow after somebody, but guess what? They didn't even know that person's name. To name the floor after someone, they didn't know the person's name. I ended up having to take over the motion and say that person's name. And guess what happened then? The vote was unanimous. And of course, that person received the honor after he was dead. So maybe when I'm dead and gone, maybe somebody will think that I'm worthy of having a building named after me. That was my conception. I'm going to stop because I'm getting very emotional because I can't believe that people that I've helped, and that's every single one of the people that are sitting up here.
Thank you, Dr. Gorey.
You're
Joy
welcome.
Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Straker. What I would like to say is, first of all, Dr. Gorey, thank you for all your years of service. I don't think anyone up here on this board would negate the service that you've done over the years in the community. With that being said, my thoughts on the series Policy F is I agree with what we have, the revision that we have. And I will state the reason that I feel the way that I feel about the revision that we have. First of all, we've all been elected to this seat. This is a selfless position. It's not about us. It's always about the kids. So if we're worried about something pertaining to us in recognition, that will come. But our most important, and to get emotional, it's when you start dealing with the kids. That's what we were elected to do. It wasn't about us. It's never about us, and it will never be about us. If I don't receive a name, a plaque, or whatever, that's not what I was voted in to do. It's about the kids. We can have our names on a building, and our kids could not be learning a thing. We can get Dr. Colbert to stand up here and talk to us again about where we're standing, where we're trying to go, and what we're trying to do. We have work to do in this community. We have serious work to do with our students, and it's not the time. It's not saying that it will never happen, but now is not the time. We have too much work to do. We have to save our kids. That's where our focus needs to be, and that's where our focus needs to remain. And I think anybody, the 9 of us on here, can understand that that is our top priority. So I am sticking with what I have revised it to be because this is selfless. It's not about us, and it never will. It's about those kids.
Can I be clear with the audience and the people who are watching virtually? In that revised policy, it says that we cannot name a building after a sitting, elected, or serving board member. Go back to the tapes, Ms. Corey. I have sat here and I say it to you. The day that Ms. Corey gets off this board, I'm going to lead the biggest campaign to get that building named after her. I said it to the public. I said it to you. The day that Ms. Corey leaves this board, I am going to personally be part of the campaign to get that building named after her. If I am not in the seat at the time that she's doing that, I am still going to put on my sneakers, put on my tracksuit, and I'm going to campaign for that building to be named after Miss Jessie Goree. Miss Goree, you're right, and I really shouldn't be getting personal here. You have been a great ally to me. You're actually a great ally to me right now as I've transitioned over to the board chair. Nobody's taking away any of your accomplishments. Nobody is taking away any of your contributions to the children, to the staff, and to the community at Clayton County. The only restriction is that a sitting board member, for the purposes of appearance, cannot get a building named after them as they sit on this seat. That's it. Ms. Williams.
I just had two comments. So the first time when the naming option came up, we all agreed to have send something out to the community to put in a form to see what they say. Then that second week, we retracted it and said, oh, well, we can't because somebody's sitting on the board. And so what George was saying about the students, we need to make the students come first, and we don't have time to be naming stuff after somebody sit on the board or whatever, but we done named plenty of things so far. It had nothing to do with the students. I mean, she's sitting on the board now, but everybody else that we named is not, nothing to do with the students. We did the thing at Jonesboro,
Has
we
any
did
of
the
those?
chair, we did the Moore thing. I'm just saying, don't act like it's because of the naming, because we've been doing that already.
Has any of the sitting board members in the history of Clayton County Public Schools?
I'm not saying, I'm just saying, you're trying to say it's all about the students, but we've already done naming.
Gotcha.
So that's not all about the students.
Okay. Any further discussion? Ms. Goree, you have something else to say?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
To Ms. Cooper's point about it, because I think she seems to think that that I come here to have the building named after me. That was not the case. As a matter of fact, Ms. Cooper, I've known longer than anyone. And she talked about us working for students. It was your daughter who attended school with my son, which is the reason that I'm on the board. So please don't ever say that I don't work for children, because had I not been on this board and Ms. Baker being on this board, we were the two that were here when we lost our accreditation. I do work in each and every area. That is my point. And all you had to say that night was, hey, Ms. Goree, I think we should just, not do it because you're sitting here and it, makes an appearance that we're being political or whatever. And I understood. What I didn't understand is why the person that I knew the longest on the board and the person that I've always promoted when I left North Clayton High School as the school council chairperson and recommended you, that yours was the first light that went on. So that's why I took it personal. And even if it's never put up there, I just think that board members should understand that whatever your position is, that we are worthy of having our names on the building just like anyone else, because we don't have any problems putting someone else's name on the building. And I don't, and you can leave this, but I'm requesting right now that you remove this statement. It is not fine as it is. You need to go back through here and look at some things in this that you came up with. Because there are things that
Ms. Goree, could you email those
I'm going
changes
to
that you
do,
want?
but we're having a discussion. Don't show racism yourself by talking about writing something on a piece of paper. When you put this out, you're making a statement that you wouldn't name a facility after some person that you can't pronounce their name or you can't spell their name. That doesn't make any sense. And then there are things that were in the original statement that addressed about naming parts of the building. For example, our policy stated that we don't name parts of the buildings after people, but we all voted to name the gymnasium after the Douglas brothers because they did great work. We are trying to name the courtroom at Jonesboro High School after a young man that lost his life. And I think it's a shame that you feel all right with naming something after somebody's long gone and dead and in the ground. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't gain anything. The thing that you don't realize is our names are in every building that's been built since we served on the board. So if we can't put our names on the building, Mr. Joseph, that means the next time when you build a building, don't put anybody's name on that building. The cornerstone.
Ms. Cooper?
Just really quickly, I wanted to correct something that Ms. Victoria had stated. I did not say a sitting board member. That's why I said this is a selfless position. So I want to kind of correct that because I think you were assuming I was saying in a whole, everyone, board members. That's it.
Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda is the business agenda. There are 3 items that are on the business agenda for action, which is the lease agreement for the Junior Achievement, the lease agreement for the Chamber of Commerce, and the lease agreement for the Clayton County Foundation. We're going to remove these items and put them in the next board members' consent agenda. But before moving them, I want to know if there's any discussion left in regards to the lease agreements for the Junior Achievement, Chamber of Commerce, or the Clayton County Foundation. Ms. Goree?
Actually, you skipped policy K and L, which, as policy F said, that the staff didn't recommend any changes. Just certain people on the board recommended changes. So with policy series K, because maybe I'll go home and figure out something to put in here to just change it. So it doesn't look like the board is being discriminatory by only selecting one policy that has to do with naming, having a problem.
Okay, we have to move on. The business agenda,
Need to address those things on that agenda and then go down to what you're saying.
is there any discussion on I as a second read? I'm sorry, L and K. Are there any discussions? Ms. Hill, you have a discussion for it? Ms. Cooper, Ms. Williams, do you have a statement for L and K? Mr. Christmas? Oh, he's not here. Okay. Doesn't seem like there's any discussion left for L and K. So moving on to, I got Ms. Baker.
I was just going to say, seeing that there has been no changes either from the staff or sent in, that we move forward.
Good deal. All right, so those lease agreements, do we have a discussion on the Junior Achievement, Chamber of Commerce, or the Clayton County Foundation? Ms. Cooper?
So we're pulling those, right, until Dr.
We're pulling
Smith
them
makes the
until next week.
corrections. Yeah, no.
Dr. Goree?
I was just going to state the same thing, that we're moving them to, once we get the information, our space is filled in and concise information, then we will move them forward for a vote.
You got it. Next item is the approval of the proposed board meeting agenda for February 3rd, 2025. I need a motion. Ms. Cooper?
I don't think the correct information is uploaded in there.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't think the correct information is uploaded in there. When we
No,
click on it, it has,
Right, they're going to put the correct information on eBoard with the leases. Are you talking about the leases?
no, I'm actually talking about the approval of the proposed board meeting agenda. It's not there.
Okay, so say that, I'm sorry, Cooper?
So the approval of the proposed board meeting,
Right.
it's not there. The attachment is showing the field house executive summary
Okay.
on mine.
So it's not properly attached to the
Right.
invoice? And what do we do?
Mr. Chair, we could say just that the agenda that the board is voting on at this particular moment would be the one that has been discussed throughout this past agenda, and certainly it will be reflected properly and posted online as soon as possible.
That first part of it again?
I can make a motion to just accept. I think the chairperson actually stated the way it would be, that we would move all of the items to consent.
That's correct.
And then, we already have certain items for consent, but we will add what is listed under item, I believe that's 9, as a part of the consent agenda for our next meeting.
So do I have an approval, an emotion for the approval of the proposed board meeting agenda for February 3rd, 2025, which has been discussed?
And move those items.
Dr. Guri, did you?
Yes, that's my motion.
Okay.
And I'll second.
Ms. Baker? Okay, can I get a vote? It's unanimous. Madam Vice Chair, is there anything that I'm missing? With that said, the meeting is adjourned.